Hello and welcome, dear listeners. I'm your storyteller, James, and I'm thrilled to share this tale with you today. I hope this story warms your heart and resonates deeply within your soul. May it inspire love, hope, and transformation in all who hear it. This is a unique narrative, a journey of love lost and found, of fate's twists, and of a woman's resilience. It's about a woman who, after enduring heartbreak, discovers the love she truly deserves. It's emotional, heartwarming, and profoundly moving. I believe you'll be captivated by its depth. So please stay with me, listen to the full story, and let it unfold in your heart. If you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe to the channel to never miss out on more beautiful stories. Now let's embark on this incredible journey together. Grace Harris was the embodiment of elegance. Her brown skin glowed like polished bronze under the sun, radiant and effortlessly beautiful. Her wide, expressive eyes held galaxies of dreams, fears, and a hidden fire yearning for freedom and love. Framed by delicately arched brows, those eyes once looked toward a future filled with purpose and the kind of love that uplifts. Yet here she stood, adorned in a bridal lehenga heavy with gold thread, her heart confined beneath layers of tradition and familial expectations. Her intricate braids, woven tightly by her mother's trembling hands that morning, symbolized not a celebration of love, but a transaction of societal preservation, a ceremony orchestrated by elders who viewed marriage as a deal rather than a devotion. The sacred chants echoed in the grand hall, each word pulling her further from the man she truly loved, Graham Robert, the calm, thoughtful CEO whose soothing voice and intelligent charm once made her heart race. His kindness melted her fears, and his quiet strength made her feel safe in ways no one else had. A man who never raised his voice, but always made her feel heard, who never touched her without permission, but always made her feel desired. They met during her internship when Grace, just 22 and ambitious, stepped into his firm with dreams brighter than the city skyline. Unlike others, Graham listened, truly listened. From that day forward, they built not just professional success, but an unspoken bond. Stolen glances in meetings, long conversations in elevators, coffee breaks that turned into deep philosophical debates. He noticed everything: the color she liked on her nails, the rhythm she hummed while writing, the way she flinched when people yelled. All of it mattered to him. She began to feel her soul opening like petals toward the sun, until she couldn't imagine a world where she wasn't his, and he wasn't hers. But the fairy tale never had a chance to bloom. Her strict traditional family had other plans. They introduced her to William Bradford, a man wealthy by birth, powerful by name, and cold by nature. His sharp suits and sharper words masked a heart full of calculation, not compassion. He was chosen not for his soul but for his status, a match made not in heaven but in bank statements. No matter how much Grace cried or begged, her pleas fell on deaf ears. They told her this was her duty, her responsibility, her moment to bring pride to the Harris name by marrying into the Bradford legacy. On a humid evening, draped in rose petals and fake smiles, she sat under the mandap with trembling hands and a hollow chest. Every ritual cut deeper into the dreams she buried beneath her painted smile. William barely looked at her during the ceremony, his eyes glued more to his phone and watch than to the woman beside him. The few glances he gave her were devoid of warmth, as if she were a product being inspected rather than a partner being embraced. When the vows were spoken, she repeated them numbly, not out of belief, but because she had no choice. When the crowd cheered and cameras flashed, capturing their fake union, she felt more alone than ever before, despite being surrounded by hundreds of people. That night, in a grand bedroom filled with expensive silk sheets and emptier energy, Grace sat at the edge of the bed, still adorned in bridal gold. Her eyes fixed on the moonlight streaming through the sheer curtains, thinking not of the man in the bathroom brushing his teeth like it was any normal day, but of Graham, his voice saying her name with reverence, the way his fingers gently grazed hers when passing documents, the way he stood protectively between her and chaos during office conflicts, the way he made her laugh with subtle wit. the way he made her feel like she mattered. He saw her, truly saw her, and loved every piece. Silent tears streamed down her face, staining her cheeks as the ache in her chest grew unbearable. A slow burning grief for a life stolen too soon, for a love unfinished, for the woman inside her that screamed to be free. She wrapped her arms around herself, trying to hold together the fragments of a shattered self, wishing the world had let her choose, wishing she could have said yes to the man who had always said no to hurting her, and not to the man who had already started ignoring her on their first night as husband and wife. As she finally lay down that night, stiff in her embroidered attire, eyes wide open toward the ceiling, she whispered his name, Graham, one last time before falling into a restless sleep, haunted by dreams of what could have been. Grace woke each morning with a quiet determination stitched into her bones, the kind of strength that blooms not in sunlight, but in the darkest corners of emotional drought, where love does not water and affection does not fall like rain. Though her heart remained cracked from the forceful separation from her true love, Graham, she rose daily with the silent grace of someone who still believed that hope, even in its faintest form, had meaning. Somewhere deep inside, she carried the belief that she could soften this hardened life, that perhaps if she poured enough kindness into cold spaces, they might warm with time. She cooked William's favorite meals, even if he never noticed the perfect balance of spices or the warmth of dishes made with trembling fingers and quiet longing. She ironed his shirts and polished his shoes, arranging his ties by color, hoping perhaps a small gesture might earn her a nod, a smile, something human. She made the house a home, planting flowers on the windowsill, because life needs beauty, even in captivity. She decorated their bedroom with soft lighting and lavender candles, not for herself, but in hope that comfort would make him linger beside her. She learned his schedules, memorized his silences, studied his habits with the same devotion one gives to Holy Scriptures. But no matter how much she gave, William remained emotionally bankrupt, cold like glass, transparent in his disinterest, and sharp whenever touched the wrong way. Though he never hit her, his indifference stung more than any slap ever could. His silence was thunder, his stares like winters, and his touch, when it came, was mechanical, void of tenderness, a transaction toward one singular goal, a son. She noticed the way his expression only softened when speaking of heirs, of legacy, of passing down his name to someone who could carry the family wealth and title. Each time she heard the word boy, it sliced her spirit like a blade dipped in vinegar, reminding her that, in his eyes, she was not a woman to be cherished, but a vessel to be used. Even in the rare moments when he took her hand, it felt like obligation rather than affection. She tried harder, convincing herself that if she gave more, loved deeper, endured longer, he might one day look at her and see the soul she carried, the dreams she had buried, the love she was capable of giving if only someone would meet her halfway. She whispered prayers at night, lying beside him as his back faced hers, a physical metaphor for emotional distance, asking the stars if there was something broken in her, if her womb was the only measure of her worth, if her voice mattered in a home where silence reigned like a tyrant. She cried quietly into pillows that had never absorbed the warmth of shared laughter or shared secrets. Still, she woke each day with eyes puffy from sadness, but lips painted with soft smiles, telling herself that even roses bloom between cracks in concrete, and maybe, just maybe, love could grow in a house built without it. She listened carefully when he spoke about his ancestors, about bloodlines and dynasties, his obsession with a boy child becoming clearer each day. When he finally touched her, rare moments when he chose to visit her bed, it was with detachment that made her feel like a stranger in her own skin. She would close her eyes, not to imagine pleasure, but to escape into a memory of Graham's voice, Graham's presence, the feeling of being seen and valued, of being more than just a body in service of someone else's ambitions. Yet Grace, in all her quiet suffering, remained kind, never allowing pain to poison her core. When the servants whispered behind her back about William's distant nature, she never rebuked them, instead offering them warm tea and gentle smiles, because she knew bitterness could rot a soul from the inside out, and she refused to let him take that part of her. When relatives visited, she dressed in her best, smiled for photographs, and answered every intrusive question about when she would give William a son with graceful nods and carefully chosen words. But behind that smile was a woman breaking a little more each day, not because she was unloved, but because she was unseen. Still, she kept journals full of affirmations, letters to a God she hoped was listening, reminders that her worth was not defined by a Y chromosome. In those pages, she wrote about the day she would be loved, not for her body, but for her heart, not for what she could produce, but for who she was. Though the nights grew lonelier and the tension in the house more suffocating, she lit candles in every corner, hoping they would light not just the rooms but also the frozen chambers of her husband's heart. Even though that thaw never came, she continued trying, because love, true love, she once learned in Graham's eyes, never stops hoping, never stops believing, even when blooming in the dark. The day her daughter entered the world was both the most magical and the most heart-wrenching day of Grace's life, a storm of beauty and pain colliding inside the pale walls of the hospital room, the cries of newborns mixed with the quiet prayers of mothers clinging to a shred of peace. As Grace lay trembling, sweat-drenched, exhausted from the excruciating hours of labor, her heart had already fallen into rhythm with the tiny heartbeat she carried for 9 months. The moment she heard that first cry, soft, fragile, and breathtakingly alive, something within her cracked open in the most divine way, flooding her soul with a love so consuming, so fierce, so raw it stole her breath. She turned her head weakly, eyes a woman discarded like a forgotten promise, but a mother, a warrior, a sun in her daughter's sky. Grace held Era close, the thrum of her own heart sinking with the tiny one pressed against her chest. She didn't call after William. She didn't plead, because some battles aren't worth fighting when the war has long been lost to someone who never saw the value of what stood before him. Instead, she turned inward, toward the light still flickering, still alive, still hers. The flames in the hearth crackled, reflecting off her tear-streaked face, and in their flicker, Grace made another silent vow, not to keep begging for crumbs of affection, not to mourn a man incapable of love, but to rise, not just for herself, but for the girl who now looked at her with wide eyes, needing assurance, needing truth. She crouched, brushing a curl from Ara's cheek and whispering through the quake in her voice, "It's just us now, my love, but we're enough, more than enough." And Ara, too young to understand divorce or rejection, simply nodded, as if she'd always known that the only warmth worth holding on to came from the woman who had never stopped fighting for her. Grace scooped her up and sat down by the fire, holding her tighter, her body aching but her spirit, wounded as it was, still intact. The storm outside roared like grief, but inside the quiet of their little bubble, something else began to take shape. A beginning, cloaked as an ending. A kind of freedom found only when the weight of someone else's indifference is finally lifted. Grace didn't know what tomorrow would bring. Legal meetings, whispers, cold stares. But she did know this. She and Ara would rise. She stood at the wall where the light would eventually seep through, where storms ended, even if it still poured around her. As the rain beat against the windows, Grace gathered herself, held Ara close, and walked into the kitchen to warm some milk. Because no matter how broken she felt, no matter how sharp the blow, her daughter needed a bedtime story, a hug, and a mother who refused to let a man's rejection define their worth. So she stood, trembling but unshaken, heartbroken but unbowed, knowing the story wasn't over. It was only turning a page. The night lay silent, save for the wind brushing softly through empty streets. In the bedroom that had never felt like hers, Grace stood before the full-length mirror, arms wrapped around her daughter, who had fallen asleep clutching a tiny stuffed bunny to her chest. The small weight of Ara's body pressed against her side like a lifeline, like a silent vow that even in the wreckage of this night, there was something worth rising for. Her eyes met a reflection, haunted and unfamiliar. The woman staring back looked nothing like the one who had once dared to dream, dared to love, dared to believe happiness was possible in a world built on arranged promises and cold expectations. But as she looked closer, past the smooth brown glow of her skin, past the delicate braids that framed her face like falling ribbons, past the shoulders bowed beneath silent burdens, she saw the exhaustion, the unanswered questions, the memories she'd buried deep. Memories of trying to be seen, to be heard, to be loved by a man who never truly looked into her eyes and asked how she was feeling. And yet within those tired eyes shimmered something else, a quiet defiance, the kind that grows in sorrow, the kind that blooms from ruin. Yes, she was broken, but not beyond repair, not beyond redemption, not beyond the healing embrace of her own strength. She wiped a tear from her cheek. Her whisper meant not for the mirror, not for the child in her arms, but for the woman inside, the one who had survived nights of cold indifference, sharp words, and a silence that never felt like love. "I'm still here." Grace gently adjusted Ara in her arms and looked once more around the room. The pristine furniture, the polished floors, the curated luxury, all William's symbols of success, but none of them had held her heart. None had offered warmth or safety. None had taught Ara what love felt like in a father's arms. And in that stillness, something inside her settled. She turned toward the door, her spine straight, her grip firm. Staying meant surviving in the ghost of a life that was never hers. She was done surviving. The rain had stopped. The clouds had parted just enough for the stars to peek through. As she stepped out of the mansion for the last time, the night air cooled her skin, and the gravel crunched beneath her shoes. She had no plan, no mapped-out future, but she carried something stronger, resolve, the kind that doesn't scream, but moves mountains in silence. Ara stirred, murmured in sleep. Grace kissed her daughter's crown and whispered, "We'll be okay, baby girl. Mama will protect you." Her voice trembled, but it was true. Each step away from the mansion shed a layer of the weight she'd carried too long. Not all at once, but slowly, like unfastening chains from skin worn raw. And she thought of the mirror, of all the times she had asked what she did wrong, why she wasn't enough, why love had to hurt. But tonight, she knew. It wasn't her who failed, it was William, who failed to see the treasure he had, the light he ignored, the soul he crushed. She was walking away from that now, towards something new, something unknown, but hers. Even if the road was uncertain, she would walk it, head held high, daughter in her arms, love blazing in her chest. Because Grace Harris wasn't just a woman left behind. She was a woman reborn through heartbreak, refined through loss. And though the tears still came, they were no longer tears of defeat. They were tears of release, of strength, of truth. She looked down at her sleeping child, then up at the stars and whispered, not just to Ara, but to the universe that had watched her endure, "We'll be okay." And something deep inside her finally believed it. She glanced over at him, her heart pounding wildly in her chest. Graham's eyes softened, his hand instinctively reaching out to her, but she pulled back, just enough to steady herself. "The divorce," she began, voice trembling. "I thought it would fix everything. I believed that walking away would bring me peace, but it didn't. It only left this hollow ache, and no amount of time has filled it." A lump rose in her throat as she struggled to continue, the weight of her past crashing against her like a wave. "I didn't want to be weak, Graham. I didn't want you to see me like this. But I couldn't keep pretending I was okay. I wasn't." She stopped, waiting, hoping. The silence that followed was thick with unspoken understanding, so heavy it felt like even the world had paused to listen. And then Graham spoke, his voice low and rough, as if holding back years of emotion. "Grace," he began, each word heavy with the distance that had grown between them. "I had no idea. I didn't know you were going through all of that alone. I should have been there. I should have known." His eyes glistened as he reached for her hand, gently cradling it in his. "But the truth is, I never stopped loving you, not for a single second. And hearing all of this, what you went through, it breaks me." His voice cracked, and for a fleeting moment, Grace saw the man she used to know, the man who had once held her heart with both tenderness and certainty. The years had changed them, But beneath the pain and silence, the love they'd once shared still pulsed. "You were always the one for me," Graham whispered, his words seeping into the cracks she had long tried to seal. "I know I messed up. I know I let you go, and I hate myself for it. But I never stopped thinking about you, never stopped wishing for us, for this." His grip tightened, like he was afraid she might vanish again. Tears blurred Grace's vision, but she didn't wipe them away. She let them fall, unsure whether they were from sorrow or relief. All she knew was that his words felt like a balm over wounds she hadn't realized were still bleeding. "I know I've made mistakes too," she whispered, barely audible. "Our lives took different turns, and I don't know if we can go back to what we were. But hearing you say all this, it makes me wonder. Maybe, just maybe, there's still something left for us." Graham leaned in, his face inches from hers, and for the first time in years, she saw that same longing, the one that used to make her heart race. "Grace," he said, his voice full of conviction, "I don't care how long it takes or what it takes. If there's even the smallest chance we can find our way back, I'll fight for it. I'll fight for you. I've never stopped loving you, and I never will." His voice trembled with everything: regret, desire, hope. Grace swallowed hard. "I don't know what the future holds, Graham. I can't promise anything. But I do know that part of me has always wanted this. Always wanted you. I can't deny it anymore. I've missed you. I've missed us." The silence that followed was gentle, one of understanding, not fear. A silence born of two people who had once broken and now stood in the glow of something healing, scars and all. She looked into his eyes and for the first time in a long time, allowed herself to believe. "Maybe we can start over," she breathed. Graham's smile was soft, genuine, reaching all the way to his eyes. He leaned in and kissed her forehead, a kiss full of promises, not of something new, but of something rediscovered, rekindled. "One step at a time," he said gently. "But Grace, I'm not letting you go again. Never again." The rooftop was bathed in a soft golden glow from the fairy lights, wrapping everything in a romantic haze. The air was crisp, cool, yet it felt warm around them, as if the very night had paused to bear witness. A breeze rustled the leaves in nearby planters, and the low hum of instrumental music set the mood. Below them, the city sparkled, distant, dreamy. Grace stood by the railing, staring out at the lights, her heart racing with everything they had shared over the past few days, the laughter, the quiet glances, the way it all felt like a love reborn. Tonight, though, tonight was different. There was an electric anticipation in the air. She looked up at the stars, and for the first time in a long time, she felt peace. Then, she felt a gentle hand on her shoulder. She turned, and there he was. Graham, handsome, steady, eyes filled with emotion. He smiled at her, the kind of smile that said more than words ever could. Then slowly, he dropped to one knee. The world stopped. Her breath caught. Her heart thundered. Everything faded but him. "Grace," he said, voice steady despite the emotion behind it, "you've shown me what real love is. The kind that lasts. The kind that heals. I thought I lost it, but it was always here. Waiting." He took a breath. "You've given me more than I ever dreamed. Your love, your trust. And more than that, you gave me Ara. That little girl means everything to me. I want to be her father. I want to raise her with you. I want to love her like she's my own, because she already is." He looked up, eyes glistening. "So, Grace, will you marry me? Will you let me be her dad?" Her knees wobbled. Her mind raced. This wasn't just a proposal. It was a promise, a future, a family. Tears spilled over her cheeks as she looked down at him, the depth of his love wrapping around her like a blanket. This man didn't just want her. He wanted all of her. Even the parts she'd once feared were too broken to love. "Yes," she whispered, voice trembling. "Yes, Graham. I'll marry you. And I want you to be Ara's father. I want all of it. I want you." Graham stood, eyes wet with joy, and pulled her into his arms. He kissed her, tender and fierce, every ounce of love pouring through that one moment. Then, a tug on her skirt. She turned. Era stood there, wide-eyed, glowing. "Daddy?" she whispered as though testing the word. Grace knelt, pulling her close. "Yes, sweetheart," she said softly. "He's going to be your daddy now." Era's face lit up with the kind of joy only a child could possess, and she rushed into Graham's arms. "Daddy," she whispered again. This time, sure. And in that moment, with Grace's arms around her daughter and Graham's hand resting protectively on both of them, she knew. This was only the beginning of love, of healing, of family. The city sparkled around them as if the universe itself had blessed their union, and beneath the stars, their forever had just begun. For the first time in what felt like forever, Grace felt the weight on her heart begin to lift. This warmth, this stillness, this love, was the family she had always dreamed of. A family rooted not in perfection, but in love, trust, and a connection that deepened with each passing day. That evening, as they eased into their new life together, the simple rhythm of daily routines began to feel like something sacred. Each night, without fail, Graham would kiss Grace gently on the forehead, his lips soft and warm against her skin. Every kiss carried a promise, promises whispered in the quiet hours of the night, promises that reached into the deepest corners of her soul. "I'll never let you cry again," he murmured one night, cradling her close, his voice thick with emotion. Those words, so tender, so full of meaning, soothed wounds that had once seemed permanent. Grace had never been on the receiving end of such comfort, such unwavering reassurance. For the first time, she felt safe, not just safe in his arms, but safe in love. Graham didn't just love her, he saw her, all of her, every fear, every flaw, every silent insecurity. And still, he chose her. Night after night, Grace no longer lay awake wondering if she was enough. With Graham, she was. With him, she had found something deeper than she'd ever dared to hope for. A love built not on conditions, but on the quiet, unbreakable foundation of mutual respect and understanding. In the hush of their shared space, with Ara sleeping peacefully in the next room, Grace could feel their love, tangible and ever-present. It wasn't the grand declarations that made their relationship extraordinary. It was the small, tender acts, the way Graham always made sure she was warm at night, the way he truly listened when she spoke, the way he looked at her like she was the only woman in the world. At night, lying in bed, the chaos of the world melted away. Words were unnecessary. Just the sound of their steady breathing, the warmth of their bodies, and the invisible thread that connected their hearts. Grace had never known this kind of peace. She had never believed love could be so soft, so quiet, and yet so powerful. And Ara, sweet, precious Ara, had become the thread that tied them even closer. Graham had welcomed her without hesitation, folding her into his heart with the same gentleness he showed Grace. Ara had begun calling him Daddy without prompting, her little hands reaching out to him in complete trust. It was as if she had always belonged to him, as if, all along, they had been waiting to find each other. The past didn't matter anymore. What mattered was this, their present, their future. As days blurred into weeks and weeks into months, Grace's heart grew fuller. Of course, life wasn't perfect. There were challenges still, as there always would be. But now she faced them not alone, but with a partner by her side. They were a team, bound not only by love, but by a shared purpose and unwavering devotion. Each night, Graham kissed her forehead and whispered promises into the dark, and each time, Grace felt her heart swell. These promises weren't just romantic gestures. They were vows, the quiet kind that built the foundation of a forever. In his arms, Grace had found home. Their nights were a breathtaking blend of passion and devotion. Every kiss Graham placed on her skin was a hymn to the love they shared. He touched her as if she were a sacred thing, cherished, adored. Each embrace, each whispered word deepened their bond. It wasn't just physical, it was spiritual. Their intimacy was an emotional language spoken only between them. Grace had never felt more beautiful, not because of how she looked, but because of how Graham made her feel, desired, valued, known. With him, love wasn't something she had to earn. It simply was. Their passion wasn't hurried or shallow, it was reverent. Each night together was a celebration, a surrender, a remembering. And when the world faded to silence, they held each other close, wrapped in warmth and wonder. Mornings brought a different kind of magic. Light streamed through the windows, soft and golden. Graham always rose first, quietly moving into the kitchen. Soon after, Grace would join him, her smile sleepy, her hair tousled, her heart full. They had fallen into a rhythm of comfort and affection. Pancake mornings became a cherished ritual, the air filled with the scent of butter and syrup, with laughter, with love. Graham at the stove, Grace at the table, their conversation drifting between dreams and memories. Then Ara would wander in, her tiny feet padding across the floor, her voice bright as she cried, "Daddy!" Graham would lift her into his arms, kiss her cheeks, and hold her as though she were his whole world. And to Grace, he was doing just that, being the father Ara had always deserved. Not out of obligation, but out of pure, devoted love. Every Saturday, Graham would take Ara to the park, guiding her as she learned to ride a bike. He was endlessly patient, offering steady hands when she wobbled, praising her courage, lifting her every time she fell. "You're doing great, sweetheart," he'd say, pride lighting up his face. Grace watched from a distance, her eyes misting as Ara's laughter echoed through the park. These small, beautiful moments were building something far greater than she had ever imagined. He wasn't just teaching Ara to ride. He was teaching her to trust, to persevere, to believe that someone would always be there to catch her. And when the nights brought fear, when Ara woke from nightmares, trembling and small, Graham was the first to rush to her side. He would gather her into his arms, whispering soft reassurances into her hair until her breathing slowed and sleep reclaimed her. "It's okay, sweetie. You're safe with me," he'd murmur, his presence a calm anchor in the storm. From the doorway, Grace would watch, tears glistening in her eyes. Because in that quiet moment, love wasn't just spoken. It was shown, over and over again. They were more than a couple, more than lovers. They were a family. And Grace, after all the loneliness, all the uncertainty, had found her home. Grace often found herself quietly watching them, Graham and Ara, marveling at how effortlessly their bond had grown. It was as if Graham had always been meant to be Ara's father, like fate had gently woven their lives together to heal the wounds Ara had carried. In return, Ara revealed to Graham a version of himself he hadn't known existed. His love for Grace was profound, but the love he held for Ara was something else entirely, tender, protective, and no less deep. He wasn't just loving Grace as his partner, he was loving Ara as his daughter, with all the devotion, patience, and warmth that only a true father could offer. In those quiet nighttime moments when Graham read Ara her favorite bedtime stories, Grace would pause by the doorway, watching. His voice, soft and steady, would rise and fall with the rhythm of the tale. Sometimes he'd pause mid-sentence, looking down at Ara with eyes full of love. It was a sight that never failed to make Grace hold her breath in awe. This man, this gentle soul, was not just the love of her life. He had become the heart of their family. She'd watch him tuck Ara in, kiss her forehead, and whisper goodnight. And when Ara sleepily murmured, "Good night, Dad," in that small voice laced with affection, a tear would slip silently down Grace's cheek. Not from sorrow, but from overwhelming joy. She had never imagined that the man she loved would become such a beautiful father. But Graham had exceeded every hope, becoming everything they needed and more. Every shared moment, whether it was teaching Ara how to ride a bike, calming her after a nightmare, or simply lying on the floor making silly faces, solidified their little family's bond. Grace knew in the depth of her being that they were complete. There was no love greater than what lived within their home. And in Graham's embrace, she had found her forever. Weekends became treasured adventures. Every dinner felt like a celebration. Graham, with his quiet gestures and deep affection, made sure Grace never again questioned whether she was loved. He showed it in 100 ways, from fresh flowers on her desk to the simple, comforting act of holding her hand when she looked overwhelmed. He believed in love expressed through action, through presence. It wasn't about grand gifts. It was in the thoughtful details, warm baths prepared after long days, rose petals scattered across the water's surface, and the gentle way he massaged her shoulders as she relaxed. It was in the soft murmur of his voice, the way he reminded her that she was deserving of peace, of gentleness, of love. Those baths weren't just rituals of care. They were sacred pauses, declarations of devotion without a single word spoken. And in the evenings, as candlelight flickered between them at the dinner table, Graham would lean in and whisper, "I love you," with such raw sincerity that Grace felt it settle into her bones. It wasn't just something he said. It was something he meant with every breath. In those moments, the world would quiet, and she would feel the depth of what they shared. A love that transcended routine. A love that had become their safe harbor. Their days were also filled with joy and laughter. Ara, always full of life, would interrupt their sweet moments with a giggle and a teasing, "You two kiss too much." Her innocent mischief made them laugh, and they'd play along, pretending embarrassment. But secretly, they knew her words were just part of the magic. A little girl thriving in a home built on love. Graham took time every weekend to plan something special, whether it was beach walks, baking cookies, or spontaneous dance parties in the kitchen. Every moment was filled with joy. But what mattered more than the activities was the togetherness, the unspoken promise that no one in their family would ever feel alone again. Grace often found herself marveling at Graham, at the way he had become the rhythm of their lives, the quiet constant who made everything feel safe and sacred. He had a way of making the ordinary feel extraordinary. A kiss on her forehead each morning, a hot cup of coffee delivered with a smile, a note left on her pillow just to say, "I see you, I love you." These small things wove a tapestry of love that felt bigger than anything Grace had known. For the first time, she felt truly seen, not for who she pretended to be, but for all that she was. And Graham loved every part of her, scars, fears, flaws. He kissed them all, held them gently, and never let her forget that she was worthy of every ounce of love he offered. In return, she had learned to love herself through his eyes. And Ara, sweet Ara, had blossomed. Bright, curious, compassionate. She was a child who had never known a day without love. Graham had embraced her without hesitation, never treating her as anything less than his own. Their bond was real and deep, and Grace would often watch the two of them together, heart full of gratitude. She had once believed that happiness was a fleeting thing, a brief moment to be cherished before it slipped away. But now she knew better. Happiness wasn't luck. It was something you built, moment by moment, with love, patience, and choice. Together, she and Graham had built something lasting, something sacred. And even when life threw challenges their way, they faced them hand in hand. Their love wasn't perfect, but it was real, deep, steady, rooted in faith and trust. They didn't need extravagant declarations or riches, just each other and the life they were building with Ara. Grace would often reflect on how far they had come, how every tear, every heartbreak had led her to this life, a life where she woke up beside the man who kissed her forehead and made silent promises with every touch, a life where her daughter ran into their arms after school, eyes shining, a life where love wasn't just spoken but lived every single day. This was her happily ever after, not a fairy tale, but something far better. It was hers, beautiful in its imperfections, rooted in real, messy, breathtaking love. And as she looked at her family, at Graham, at Ara, Grace knew with unwavering certainty that she had found everything she had ever longed for.